want to thank you all for coming out tonight. This program is being put on by the Greater Oakland Republican Club, and it's a program presenting information in the public interest. The format tonight will be that Marion Giannopoulos, the Lake Orion Community School Superintendent, will make a PowerPoint presentation. When she's finished, then we will turn to representatives in favor of the bond issue who will speak for 4 or 5 minutes on why they favor it. Then we will let the people who are opposed to the bond issue have a similar 4 to 5 minutes. And then we will have it open to questions from the audience. To avoid a back and forth and getting into argument and things like that, if someone has a question, we ask that they submit it in writing. There are index cards that look something like this that are available. So if you are as things are being said, if you think you want to ask a question, raise your hand, and people from the club will make sure that you have a card that you can, and if you need a pen or a pencil, they can provide that also. Raising your hand gets you a card. It doesn't get you recognized from the podium. And I'd also like to thank Brenda Hare, Sue Stone, and Sandy Walker for working and providing the refreshments back there. And so feel free to help yourself to the water, the coffee, or the cookies. And again, thank you very much for coming. I'm Joanne Van Tassel. This is a presentation of the Greater Oakland Republican Club, and this is information in the public interest. Tonight's topic is the bond issue that the Lake Orion Community Schools are putting before the voters in the August election. At this time, I'd like to introduce Marion Giannopoulos, the superintendent of Lake Orion Community Schools, so she can make her presentation. Ms. Giannopoulos?
Thank you, and with me tonight I have Assistant Superintendent John Fitzgerald. John is the Assistant Superintendent for Business and Finance in the district. He and I will be presenting together. In addition, I'd like to acknowledge that we have a number of our staff members and board members here, so that in the event you have specific questions related to their area of responsibility, they will be able to respond. So, I thank you all for being here, and we have 2 goals tonight. One goal primarily is to provide the community with information about our upcoming bond, as Joanne stated, which is August the 6th coming up. The second goal really is to respond to your questions that you may have, and Joanne said you have to fill out a card, so if Joanne said that, you better fill out a card. So let me begin by just sharing some of the information from our bond. I don't have to tell you how successful our students have been and how our schools have been. Our students win awards, our staff members win awards, our programs have been outstanding throughout the years. Be that as it may, we want to maintain the excellence in our school district, and really that is why we have put these 2 proposals on the ballot. And let me go through those with you, and then John's going to jump in. We're going to do the kind of a tag team here. The proposals really focus in 3 areas. First and foremost is safety and security. And again, I don't have to share with you the issues of safety and security in our schools. As you well know, with the recent incidents that occurred at Sandy Hook in Connecticut and many other areas, this is a primary and utmost concern for you as a community, and certainly us as an internal administrators and staff. Second issue is infrastructure, our facilities and our sites, and we'll talk a little bit more about that in a minute. And then finally, the whole issue of technology, not just technology as computers, but really to look at technology as an infrastructure issue that not only addresses the classroom, but also addresses the safety and security of our students. The 2 proposals, one is called Proposition A. These are for the things that we believe are the most critical for our school district. We're going to go through some of those with you, and then Proposition B, which are some additional efficiencies and technology. So let me just share with you for a minute how this whole thing was developed. In 2010-11, a facilities assessment was conducted in the district, and a bond was placed before this community for voting. That was in February of 2011. As you well know, that bond was defeated. So subsequent to that, we looked at our facility assessment. We listened carefully to what the community was telling us, what the issues were. And so we also did a very extensive audit of all of the technology issues in our district. And so we went to the board a little, probably beginning of this year, and addressed the board with a comprehensive plan that we wanted to bring to our community for a vote. And the board unanimously approved placing this issue on the ballot. In the interim, in the middle column that you see there, I want to make it clear that as a result of the failed, defeated bond issue, our board allocated about $3.5 million, and that was to kind of patch up those immediate issues that we had placed in the bond, and as a result of being unsuccessful, were really critical needs. These were repair kinds of things. So I want to share with you the condition of our buildings and the age of our buildings. If you look at where we are right now, you'll see that some of our buildings are as old as 64 years old. I don't know if you're familiar with Blanche Sims Elementary, but that is the oldest building in the district. Our high school, quite frankly, is 17 years old. Our average age of most of our buildings is about 51 years old. I'm going to let John talk a little bit about this, but we wanted to share with you some photographs of the aging facilities so you have an understanding of the condition of the buildings and what we're looking for in this bond. So, John?
Thank you. As you can see in the upper left-hand corner, that is a picture of one of our elementary roofs. There's the defining line there is the difference between a patchwork that was done several years back and some of the really older parts of the roof. As you can see on the left side, it's literally deteriorating and completely crumbled. On the upper right-hand corner, you can see an example shot of one of the windows in some of our facilities. Literally, two of our complete facilities, elementaries, still have single-pane windows. In this bond issue, that would all be upgraded and renovated out. The item on the lower left is the item on the lower left-hand corner is an example of a roof where we actually have algae growing on the roof because of drainage and sinking of the actual rooftop itself relative to the age of it. The lower right-hand side is an example of just corrosion associated with some of our HVAC equipment, which causes inefficiencies and it causes the other equipment itself to wear out quicker than it should. Here we have a couple of shots that emphasize the point that we have, because of the age of several of the buildings, there's embedded plumbing issues. On the face of this, it looks like we need to do some immediate out front plumbing work. Once you get into that wall, all the piping and all the infrastructure itself needs to be dealt with. Upper left-hand corner we refer to as Lake Stadium. The rains that we had, is it 2.5, 3 weeks ago now? The roof of that facility, again, has sagged to the level where it's when it rains a storm at a rate that it did 3 weeks ago, the drainage period is so slowed because of the sag in the existing roof. We end up with a massive water buildup on the roof, which now from a load point of view, there's no danger of the facility roof itself is having a problem. It just accelerates and deteriorates the entire interior structure and accentuates the breakdown of the durability of the materials itself. The next three photos are all kind of tied together. On the lower left-hand side is some equipment over at, I believe that's Weber? Paint Creek Elementary. On a nightly basis, on the upper right-hand corner is a picture of a roof where there's an existing leak. And on a daily basis, that equipment has to be put aside and covered up with protective tarping to protect it from leaking roof, which has been patched a few times, but it's just to the point where it needs to be completely restored in that facility.
Let me just talk a little bit about what's driving the proposal. I mentioned earlier about the safe environment, and that really is uppermost in our bond proposals, providing that safe, secure environment for our students. Also, the issue of providing a functional, instructional, learning environment. I'm going to talk a little bit more about that in a minute, but that's really very important for us as we have our students preparing them for careers and universities and colleges and the workforce. Equally important is what the benefit is to our community. This is not only for our schools, but it is an investment in our community, especially as a result of the aging facilities. And finally, I mentioned earlier that we listen to our community. And when we put this package together, it was so that we would gain the trust with our community that we are great stewards of your assets. So these are the key features of our bond, kind of in a graphic format. And what you'll see is in the proposal, about 51% of the proposal is the safety, security, and infrastructure, the facilities, site, and upgrades. And then about 44% is the technology infrastructure. I'm going to have John talk to you a little bit about our safety security issues. We did do a complete assessment with the Oakland County Sheriff's Department shortly after the Sandy Hook issue. The intent of that was to determine what we could do in our buildings to secure and enhance the technology that we needed, and to secure and enhance our students' safety. So John, I want you to talk a little bit about the three-ring approach that we will be doing in our building.
Thank you. As Marion had mentioned, we had worked with the Sheriff's Department with respect to reviewing the entire district's facilities, and the Sheriff's Department put forth what they refer to as their three-ring strategy in terms of security for the district. What it really means is there's three catch points in terms of getting security tied to the entire facility. The first ring, so to speak, is the exterior of the building, and in the proposal there's door release controls, automated video camera control systems, ability to seal the envelope of the facility itself. The second ring of the three-ring security approach is so that when you do allow a person in through that first line, they come into a secured, sectioned off area, which would constitute the second ring of security. We did do analysis on all of our facilities. All of our facilities' footprints are a little bit different. So each building will have a unique fitted solution to that facility. For example, Orion Oaks down the road, when you come in through their vestibule doors, if you picture when you come in through those doors, you immediately are released to the left or right going into the open hallways. An example of a potential resolution to that situation is to add two sets of interior walls that are coated and have controlled door access to create that second ring at that point in that facility. And then the third ring itself is considered the actual door access points to the classrooms themselves. All those doors are also going to be reviewed and up to date in terms of their physical capabilities and hardware and things of that nature. Along with these upgrades and security will be critical HVAC control systems and alarm systems. We will, as I said, do some modifications to several entryways, and the entire security camera system within the currently within the district is outdated and will be replaced, as well as the intercom systems and video and alarm systems on all the exterior doors and access points.
I said I was going to talk a little bit about the technology. What you see in this picture here is a number of technology equipment that is quite obsolete, and I make a joke, but I said that American Pickers is going to come and take these because they're so antique. This is representative of many of the tools that we have in our classrooms: outdated Mac computers, old projectors, things that are really not of good use and also obsolete. Our goal really is to bring 21st century equipment and 21st century tools into the classroom for our students so that they learn the same way that they're living. Our students use technology in the same manner that we used to use pencils and paper. It's really about moving away from chalkboards and chalk into the new technologies, especially interactive technologies. I think that's a real key to our proposal, so that students are interacting with the technology. Smart boards, as an example, and interactive projectors allow the classroom teacher to use these technologies so that students are learning and actually engaging actively in their learning. It really is about transforming the learning environment, and I don't want to belabor this, but we really want to look at using the technologies for a lot of different things within our school programs and our curriculum. For example, I know that you're all very familiar with online learning. That is not something, a new term. We want to be able to initiate a number of online opportunities for our students, such as world language courses. We would like to expand into STEM classes, the science, technology, engineering, and mathematics. More vocational education, career tech, and fine arts programming for our students. In order to do that, we need to have not only the tools, but the infrastructure. Our infrastructure does not allow us to even, in many cases, load software onto the tools that we have for our students. So someone asked me, what are the advantages of instructional technology? What are you going to do what are you going to do differently if you have these different technologies in your classroom? So I've listed a number of these things, but let me just kind of go through some of them. One key is accessing information and resources. Having the technology for students to really be able to expand their use of resources that are online. For example, if a student is doing a report, traditionally they go to the encyclopedias or to the library and they may get one textbook. With technology and the internet and the web resources that are available to them, it's so much more comprehensive and so much more engaging for our students. Editing of written works. Way back when, I was a secretary at one time, and I remember that when we had to type something on an old typewriter, manual, we didn't even have electric typewriters then, we used carbon paper, and preparing a report took hours and hours. With the use of technology tools and the resources available to our students, they can edit their work in a very meaningful way. So these are just some of the examples of how things will improve and be different for our students. So that we transform these old computer labs. If you look at these Mac computers, we were going to bring one with us to show you tonight, but it was so heavy we couldn't carry it. So our goal really is to transform these old computer labs into new project-based learning environments. So that's the technology and the instructional part of it. Equally important are our facilities. So John, I want you to talk a little bit about those kinds of things that we will be doing for the infrastructure.
Each of the facilities over the past 2 years has gone through, as Marion had spoken to earlier, an extensive roof audit process. We're expecting about $5 million worth of restoration and replacement in several of the buildings' roofs. The HVAC air handling control systems are going to be upgraded. An electrical, HVAC, and control systems upgrade is planned on being put in place to maximize operational efficiency. There's really no point in replacing all the windows, the single pane windows, if we can't control and have good operational controls to the facilities. So along those lines, there'll be additional plumbing. In one of the pictures earlier we saw kind of highlights the point that there's a need for upgrade in that realm. Doors, frames, windows, hardware, a lot of that's tied to the security piece. We had a sidewalk audit done. There is an element of that that's built into the bond proposals as well. It's a sidewalk and paving parking area audit. The athletic fields, courts, and some lighting in some of the fields are scheduled to get upgraded, replaced, or renovated. The athletic fields themselves, we've got the football field and the soccer field. The synthetic turfs are now 10 years old, and by the time the bond passes and they come up for schedule for work, they'll be over 12 years old. They've served the district well from a cost savings point of view. As compared to natural turf fields, we've estimated anywhere between $25,000 and $30,000 a year per field in cost avoidance by going synthetic turf. and multiplying that over 10 years, the 10 years that we've had them, they basically are more than paying for themselves, but they're now at the point where they're beginning to degrade. The sunlight itself actually degrades the surface of those fields, and they're becoming a health and safety issue for the children that are playing on it. The tennis courts are original equipment courts. They've been patched the last couple of years, and they are now themselves a accident for a child waiting to happen. And then there's several spots of lighting work that we're looking to do in terms of the exterior side. The next two slides are, it's kind of a breakout by facility, by proposal, which facility will be getting what work. And I know you can't read it, but we've got lots of handouts for you for the detail of it. I think the second slide is proposal B, the same kind of approach. That was a little larger, but still really not readable in this kind of a format. And we also have a breakout of that information too. And then that leads us to the why now. Do you want me to go right into this? The why now speaks to really the urgency of what we believe we need to get done at the district. Practically speaking, from the business office and the finance point of view, a bond proposal in August allows us to get out with bids on the streets by February or sooner. That puts us at the head of the pack in terms of the spring work coming up, the spring work cycle, and that puts us in position to maximize or get the best pricing. That's from a practical point of view. From another practical point of view, we've already noted that any delays are going to just compound costs. And as a practical example of that, about a month and a half ago, one of our elementaries had a cooling system problem that we put the Band-Aid fix on it to get us through until we can address a good repair or replacement of the whole unit. But the Band-Aid itself is going to probably cost upwards of $100,000 because the equipment is just being limped along at this point. The cost itself for the August election would be no cost difference if we moved it off to this coming November. The difference, again, in my mind, goes back to the practicality of going in August in the strategy of getting the superior pricing, the better bid prices in terms of the work we want to have done. And ultimately, the more work that we can squeeze out of the bond from the bid pricing is the more that ends up focused on the classroom itself in terms of supporting our core business of instruction.
Let me just go through a little bit about what has happened internally in terms of our operational budget. Now, this is not related necessarily to the bond budget, but I just wanted to share with you, the audience here in our community, what has happened in terms of the amount of money that we receive from the state. Since 2009, 10, and 11, you'll note that the foundation or the fund that was given to each student per student was pretty tapered off at $8,300. And then in the year 2012, there was a dramatic drop of our foundation allowance per pupil, which we do not anticipate is going to change. In fact, we're sure that it's not going to change. And so, knowing that our funding was not going to increase, and knowing that this was impacting our budget so that we always had a balanced budget, we have made, in the past 10 years, over $20 million in reductions from the operations of our school district. $6 million of those reductions have been just in the past 2 years. And this is how we have generated those reductions. For those of you who are internal staff and parents in our community, you know that we've had staff reductions. We have made a major effort in restructuring our benefits program for staff. We have privatized our custodial services. Right now, we are sharing services of 2 of our administrators with the Clarkston School District. Our Director of Operations and our Director of Food Services work both in Lake Orion as well as in Clarkston. We have restructured the debt. John's going to talk about that in a minute. We have improved our operational efficiencies to save money. Some of you may have heard a commercial of one of our staff members, Andy Fountain, where we received a $60,000 grant back to the district as a result of a number of our efficiencies. Our operations staff win awards consistently. Our schools have become green schools as a result of tightening our budget and the operational efficiencies. And despite all of that, where we've really tightened our belt, I think it's important that the community also is aware of some of the things that really impact our operations, things that we call unfunded mandates. Something as simple as having a flag in every classroom, and I'm really for that. But we also have to have certain size flags outside of each building. These things cost. That's a simple one. But let me give you one that's even more expensive to us. The current Obama health care is going to have a dramatic impact on our budget as a result of we have a number of employees in the district who do not receive health care that now will have to. And finally, one that most people are not even aware of, and that's transportation for students who are homeless. The McKinney-Ventro Act, which is a federal act, requires that if a student lives in your community and is educated in your community and then moves to another district as a result of being homeless, for instance, they are buddied up or living with another family, the original district is required to transport that child to Lake Orion. So for instance, last year alone, our hit for transportation of 27 homeless children was $255,000. We are transporting children as far away as the Detroit Public Schools as a result of this federal legislation. So I share that with you just so you understand that there are a number of issues that attack our operational budget equally as our declining fund balance or our declining per pupil expenditure. So one of the issues that I've heard in the past, and we heard this a lot during the last bond, is can you use these capital funds for general fund expenditures? The law is very clear about that. And John, he's much more adept at explaining this, so I'm going to turn the mic over to him.
We can't. Bond proceeds must be used for authorized projects. In the school world, general fund funding can be used to purchase any requirements of the school district. It's traditionally used to handle your program operations. In my mind, it's the core focus of our instructional programs. In the state of Michigan, the bonding process is the only one of two existing real ways that districts handle the funding of their major capital project issues. There's another issue that could potentially be useful down the road, which is probably a topic for another meeting, but that itself needs some work as well. But from a bonding point of view and from the general fund point of view, as mentioned earlier by Marion, the board had authorized a little over $3 million, $3.5 million to do some facility capital type work that could have been handled by a bond, but we used it out of the general fund to handle these immediate need, really Band-Aid to get a slim through approach to fixing some immediate crisis in that regard. So the goal with the bond is to take care of and get the districts caught up and get the facilities up to a competitive edge again, and do that through the available funding means, which is the bonding and voting process. With respect to, you want to go to the fund balance one? With respect to the district's practices and policies, the board has a policy in place where we target a 10 to 15% fund balance target range for the general fund. The reason we want a 10 to 15% general fund balance, and that's 10 to 15% of our expenditure budget. So the reason that a district like Lake Orion wants to have that kind of a balance, or bank account, if you will, is for obvious cash flow needs, for payroll needs, but as mentioned earlier, when the executive branch or the legislative branch of the state in the middle of a year changes the rules and changes our funding, where we've already committed to personnel, programming, and staffing and operations, we can't stop on a dime and stop those costs. A district like any big business is a bit of a they're not going to stop on a dime to be able to handle a response to that. So that's why you have a fund balance to use that to buy the time to react to the environment and to make permanent changes going forward. Our fund balance in the general fund from 2005 through 2013, we have peaked at a little over $18.5 million in 2008. Prior to that time frame, the board and the district had the foresight to see that at some point with the growing problems in the economy, there was going to be a shut-off of funding coming from the state and relative to school districts, which pretty much that has occurred several times. So we've been using fund balance to handle and get through the tough times, and as we restructure and get our cost house, the cost side of our house in line as much as possible with our revenue side of the house. And this year we're in now, we're also looking at spending some fund balance to keep that and make those changes as well. Getting back to the bond itself, with regards to a tax impact or the millage levy on the different proposals, this slide speaks to proposal A and B. They're combined in the middle there. So the point of this slide is to give a ruler look at, or a quick look at, my house has a market value of X amount and what this bond might cost me. So for example, $150,000 market value house in the district would have, if proposal A passes, about an $86 a year increase in their tax bill, property tax bill, and if B passes, another $13.50, so a combined just under $100 combined.
I just want to switch over for 1 minute, and then I'm going to have John talk a little bit about this. But one of the issues that was raised quite prominently in our last election was the issue of useful life of the kinds of things that we were going to be purchasing with a bond and doing with a bond. So we want to be really transparent about this with our community and share with you the issue of useful life versus actual life. So what this chart shows, in the first column is a listing of various items. The middle column is what the Treasury Department identifies as really kind of a conservative number of years of actual, what they consider to be the useful life of various things that are listed there. But if you look at the column on the far right, you'll see that that is how what we consider what we are actually doing, the actual life of these various things. For instance, I did mention earlier about the Mac computers. Treasury Department says a Mac computer has the useful life of 5 years. Ours are over 12 years. I'm not going to go through each of these, but if you look at those, even with our phone system, the Treasury Department life, they quoted as 10 years. Ours is 24 years old. So if you have trouble getting into our schools on the phone, you know why. So it's really important. But we have a chart here that will explain a little bit more about repayment based on useful life.
The point of this slide is to help visualize how a bond repayment schedule is put together. The blue section itself, when you add up the blue, the red, and the purple together, they create the entire bond repayment stream associated with our proposals. So because of existing state and Treasury regs and laws, when a bond schedule, debt repayment schedule is put together, all of these laws have to be followed. They speak to the useful life issue that we were just talking about on the prior slide. And the goal of what these laws are to make sure that as the bond is being repaid back over time, that the amounts being paid back reflects the useful life of what's being bought. So when you're practically speaking, if you imagine that first year under the blue line, for the first year, the total repayment amount is $1 million for that year, the first $800,000 would be committed to the blue line, because that's the shorter term equipment and shorter term technology related purchases. And then a smaller piece, maybe 100,000 is committed to the red line and maybe 100,000 to the purple. So you've got your first year's payment of principal payback at $1 million, with the bulk of it going structurally targeted to what represents the shorter term equipment. And as it goes forward, you'll pay off the blue section, and that piece rolls into paying off the red group quicker. And then as it plays itself out, it matches the useful life to the repayment schedule. Do you want to talk? Previous successful bond elections for the district, we had some questions about that from a history point of view. Going back to 1974, 94, a $70 million issue was done for the new high school, Orion Oaks Elementary, and some buses were purchases, and there was a portion of it that didn't pass tied to the natatorium and pool structure at the high school. In February of '96, that piece that's tied to the The auditorium was passed. In 1998, another $25 million bond was authorized to build Payne Creek Elementary and the Nature Center. And in March of 2000, a $77 million bond was authorized for site development and general construction of the Oakview Middle School and transportation facility. In March of 2002, $22.7 million bond was authorized for general renovations and refurbishing and equipping of school district buildings in a general sense touching many buildings in the district. Now, keeping that in mind, since those bond issues, 3 times the district has refunded and refinanced that debt to reduce the overall debt burden to the district's taxpayers. Similar to what we just accomplished this January in 2012, we did the same kind of process. This schedule here helps to put in perspective from a debt load point of view. Right now, Lake Orion Schools is carrying about $163.8 million worth of debt liability outstanding. And from a comparative point of view, the schedule here identifies several comparative districts that we normally position or compare ourselves to, whether it's from a competitive point of view, from a student scoring point of view. And Lake Orion is pretty well situated. Arksford and Clarkston themselves, they have quite a bit more debt load going than we do. Practically speaking, from a debt per pupil point of view, we are pretty much at the bottom third of the pack there as well. And the debt itself, if on the assumption that both proposals pass in this August, we'll be adding about $33 million, and then over the course of the next 2 years, we'll be paying off about $28 million. So in 2 years' time, we'll be roughly right back to where we are at the current debt load, and then moving forward, paying down those debt loads going forward. And I kind of jumped ahead here. In 2012, this past year, the district went through and did a refunding, what's called a refunding bond issue to pay off some previously issued bonds. The point of doing that is to improve the cost and lower the cost to the taxpayers, and we saved about $6.1 million through that process. The district is always looking for those opportunities, and there's a potential for another refunding is not too far down the road in terms of lowering the total debt burden again. And when that comes up, the district will act on that as well.
Just to kind of wrap up here, we believe that there are a number of community advantages to these bond propositions. First and foremost, it really touches the vitality of our community and what people see in our community. It really will preserve our general fund monies so that we can dedicate those to the instructional program for our children. And it really preserves the community's investment in their assets. There are 2 propositions, as I mentioned earlier, an A and a B. I'm not going to go through the legal language, but they are 2 separate propositions, A and B. And these are the important dates. The election is Tuesday, August the 6th. Absentee ballots begin actually this Saturday with these dates. Anything that you would like to know further, our website is loaded with comprehensive information. It's updated on a daily basis. There's information that I hope you will take before you leave today with most of the information that we shared with you tonight. So thank you for your attention, and I'll turn this back over to Joanne.
Thank you. Before we hear from speakers in favor of the bond issue and opposed to the bond issue, remind you again, if you'd like to ask a question, raise your hand. Your question must be submitted in writing, and we'll get to as many questions as we can. Speaking in support of the bond issue are Ann Bissett and Bill Holt. Speaking in opposition to the bond issue are Bert Cuny and Joel King, and we will begin with the people speaking in favor of the bond issue.
Thank you. Thank you. My name is Ann Bissett, and I'm a parent actually of a high school student and a graduate from 2012. I'd like to start tonight by thanking Marion, John, and the entire school board, not only for the presentation tonight, but for their stewardship over the last few years. Over the last few years, we have hit at every level with an economic downturn. it has affected each of us. We've either lost our jobs and our homes, or we know someone close to us who have. Individually, we have kept, as much as possible, this from impacting our children. And Marion and John, their staff, and the school board have worked really hard to make sure that the classrooms have not differed for the students. So our children have this safe, secure environment in their classroom that hasn't changed, while the rest of the world around them may be falling apart. So I want to commend them for the efforts they've done, the cost savings they've done and implemented going through. They've made some very tough decisions, and they've kept them not visible to our students. Now we've reached a point where we need to make an investment in our schools. We need to maintain the level for our children and our community. There are three areas that these bonds cover. And the first one I want to talk about is security. This is something that I personally feel very strongly about. I have been an executive with the Boy Scouts of America. In my role, I have visited 21 different school districts and schools within those districts in our Tri-County area. And this past fall, actually, in schools in 14 local school districts. Most of the elementary schools that I enter have very high level of security. You are either buzzed into the door or you enter into an office or an office annex. You then need to provide ID or sign in to get past that point. These are local school districts around us, and most, it will vary by district, it will vary a little bit by school. What I see when I go into our elementary schools is quite unnerving for me on a personal level. I didn't realize or didn't kind of equate those until I spent so much time in other schools. So we walk into many of our schools, and you're walking into the building, and the only security or stop is the secretary noticing you coming in and coming out to sign you in if you walk by. So we need to upgrade this. This is absolutely vital that our staff and our students have the security that they need going forward. Second point that we talk about is the infrastructure in our buildings and our technology infrastructure. So we've seen pictures of our roofs that are falling apart and our plumbing that needs to be upgraded, our windows that need to be replaced, our seals broken. This type of stuff is pretty self-explanatory, and the infrastructure that needs. One of the things that really stuck out in my mind is the phone system. 24 years old, our phone system. 24 years ago, in our apartment, we had this absolutely cool answering machine with the tape in it. Remember that? Yeah, that's how old our school phone systems are. So we often get emails as parents. The phone system is down. Bear with us. Again. Often. Way too often. So this leads right into our technology. Anyone who knows me knows I am absolutely, completely not a techie. I spend a lot of time trying to figure out how to do anything on my computer. However, I do know in my house, in the last 13 years since our school district upgraded the computers, I've upgraded my computer 3 times. I've been laughed at by the salespeople, people I work with each time, that my equipment is so incredibly outdated, that it doesn't work with the new systems coming in. So if I've upgraded in 3 times and I'm not a tech person, our kids that are tech people just cannot use any more of these computers that won't even boot up for them, let alone run their programs. A lot of our classrooms have VCR and VCR tapes available for them. I don't have that at home. Don't believe I have a VCR player in my home at this time. Walking through my office this week at work, I noticed that every single one of my conference rooms where I work are wired in so that we can speak to the plants. I work for an automotive supplier at this time. We can talk to our plants by computer, by video, and we can interact and manipulate the data on that. That's our world. That's what we do. That's not cutting edge, that's not advanced. That's the way we do business. That's the world that our kids are coming into. So one of my friends the other day gave his granddaughter a picture book to read, but she was really frustrated because she couldn't make the picture bigger. Because on her mom's tablet, her picture books, she can manipulate. My great niece does her painting on her mom's notebook. I can't do that, but boy, our toddlers can. When they enter our schools, they need equipment to learn the way their minds are learning. It's not just their world, it's our world. We went to buy a new computer or a new television. Televisions now, I just cannot believe the interactive facility, not just in the video games that our kids are playing, different conversation, but even our computer, our TVs, we can have manual and we can video. The interactive capabilities that are out there need to be into our classrooms so the kids can learn in the manner that they're used to learning. And I'd like to turn it over to Bill. He's going to talk specifically about some of the bond issues.
Hi, I'm Bill Holt. I'm the immediate past president of the Greater Oakland Republican Club, and I'm now on the school board. The Greater Oakland Republican Club has always been about good government. We believe in good, effective, and efficient government. We support good and smart investments. Good investments in education are critical to our local, state, and national economies. We must be competitive at the world level. Great school systems lead to strong gross domestic product growth and to better property values. Our objective should be to make the Lake Orion School District the best in the state. Yes, many people in this room, members of the Republican Club, opposed the bond issue in 2011. The problem with the last bond request was that the payback was longer than the useful life. The weighted lifetime of the proposed purchases last time was 10.65 years. The weighted average bond period was 13 years. In other words, the previous bond assumed a loan that was longer than its assets. This is like asking your kids to pay for your loan and not have any assets for them to receive. The new bond has been designed to avoid this problem. The weighted lifetime of the 2013 bond is almost 16 years, 15.91 years. The weighted average bond period it is 12 years, 11.76. Most of the investment for the infrastructure improvements, for our facilities and technology, and for the safety and security improvements will have a long lifetime. In both real, or the slides called it actual, and the Treasury numbers I called GAAP, general accounting, accepted accounting principles, is that right? Lifetimes. So in both cases, the lifetime exceeds the payback period. So these are good investments. Our students will benefit from these investments for many years. So in my opinion, these are solid investments and we should support this. The issue in the last bond request what caused the lifetime issues was buses and the payback period on the computers. This time, there are no buses as part of the bond request. Eliminates that problem. And I'm excited about how the administration has designed the payback and the purchase for the computers. The 2013 bond proposal features a $5.8 million of technology equipment purchases, much of that's computers, representing 18% of the value of the $33 million bond. The district will purchase $4.6 million in new equipment in the first year, and this will be repaid in the first 5 years of the bond term. Also, the district has established a technology equipment replacement reserve that will be used to support replacement of 20 to 25% of the computers annually, so that we never are in this position that we've been in for the last few years again. Our total debt load is a concern for many people in this room. It is roughly $164 million. On a per student basis, this amount is much lower than most of our neighboring districts. Lake Orion Community Schools is $21.5 thousand per resident. Clarkston's debt is 23% higher per student. Avondale's is 80% higher. Oxford's is 83% higher. Brandon is 181% higher. Great schools cost money, and we must step up to make the investment needed to continue as a top-rated school district. The additional $33 million represents a 20% increase in our debt. This will still keep us well below all of our neighboring districts. And of course, as you've heard, we're going to be paying back a big chunk of that $33 million in the next a couple of years anyway. In my opinion, this is a smart investment. We should all support it. Please vote in favor of bond proposal A and proposal B, and thank you all for participating tonight and being here.
The rules that we established beforehand was that each side would have a total of 4 to 5 minutes to present why they were in favor or in opposition to it. The people speaking in favor of this have exceeded that time limit. Therefore, the people speaking in opposition to the bond issue will be given an equal amount of time to respond. This is being done in the interest of fairness. Therefore, now I turn it over to the people who are speaking in opposition to the bond proposal.
Hi, my name is Joel King. I'm actually the current president of the Greater Oakland Republican Club. I relieved Bill in that position. And I'm here mostly to speak, to focus on Proposition B. But first, I'd like to thank the Lake Orion School Administration and the school board for their hard work and the difficult decisions they've made in order to reduce spending in the 2 years since the last bond proposal. You might have noticed those large numbers of spending reductions that our superintendent pointed out. That was not easy. Those were difficult, and they were needed. And I think we all should recognize how important that was. And also that the decreases in the per student state foundation allowance are also very real numbers. And because of the way the state has restructured that, those numbers are not going to recover anytime soon. Now, state law allows school capital improvements to be locally funded by bonds such as these. My overriding concern, however, is that we currently carry $164 million in debt. Examining the debt on a per student basis gives you one impression, but I think that we need to flip that around and also examine what it means in terms of the total millage, school-related millage that is experienced by both the homestead people and the non-homestead people who are mostly in this area businesses. When you add in the additional millage that's going to occur, especially on the businesses, the school-related millages are going to be among the highest in Oakland County if we pass both of these propositions. In fact, it's going to come out about number 4 out of 35. That is that if you live in Oakland County, depending on where you live, you could attend any of 35 different school districts. Some are centered in other counties like Romeo, but if you happen to live in the bulk of Addison Township, for example, you wind up in a Romeo school district. Those numbers are available on the county website if you'd like to check those. We will go to number 2 out of 35 for businesses, for millages that are paid by the businesses and the millages that are associated with the school. just to give you another way to cut the data there. I would say that if we characterize Proposition A as things that we need to have, I'd recommend that because of the already existing debt, that we reject the nice to have Proposition B. Thank you.
Good evening, taxpayers, teachers, and board officials. All of us, young and old, have been hurt by this economy that's been lagging and may be up for another bubble. False stock market, poor bond market, and today's Michigan unemployment announced 9.2%. Parents of our students fork out $350 for sports and other activities. They're worried about college increases that are coming out every day, and the health care costs, as cited, have gone up as well. So no wonder parents are concerned. We guess, though, that it's not enough money because obviously the board thinks that $33 million is a fine time in this healthy economy. Well, we remember the special bond election 2 years ago, rush for $25 million. Now it's rush, 7 more weeks away, and it's an only item on the ticket this time, the only ballot item. So we're going to spend $50,000 of our money, which could go to the students, because we're not going to do it in November. So it doesn't make any sense. And the speculation about this being ahead of the pack on bids, that is truly a wish list, in our opinion. So I guess we could say this bond, if it passes, could jeopardize the Orion Township Fire Department's request for a $1 million increase coming up in November. So we would say that this larger bond of $28.7 million, which is bigger than the $25 million we knocked down 2 years ago, is something to take a look at. As already said, I myself am known as a fiscal conservative. When I was in the public office, as you know, I spent the money like it was coming out of my pocket. So there's $11 million out of this bond is going for infrastructure and technology. 5.8 was cited as correct, is for the tools, equipment, computers, laptops. Half of it, the other half, is going for infrastructure. Well, you talk about fat. Bottom line is, we have a problem here also with building and construction. That's a $9 million ticket out of the bond. And guess what? As cited, $5 million is for roof restoration and roof repair. How is your 15-year-old roof doing, folks? All I can say is, at this point, we do need school security. Absolutely, $3 million, that should be in the bond. But there are those that say the arranged person will still shoot out, break out a window and enter the building in spite of all the fine security. So all we can say is that we don't know what year this board will come back to us for more money, and I don't recall when school millage ever dropped. At this point, the current board has accomplished many items asked for, as Joel pointed out, and we are very, very thankful, and we commend this board for those achievements. They were able to pay off $1.6 million in debt last year, but we still owe $166 million. So we got a lot of ways to go. Any rate, adding 33 more million on top of the 166 gets us right over the 200 million mark. Pontiac, Waterford, Buena Vista, Inkster, those districts and others are in trouble. I don't think this kind of money is making us comfortable, in spite of all the improvements needed. The governor this week has signed a 2% increase for K through 12. That's 150 more per student, not as high as when the stimulus was here a few years ago. But at this point, our county assessor also indicates you're going to get a 2% increase in your assessments for sure come September when they get all the figures compiled. And I also understand the state, our governor, has provided a credit to the school systems who use 80-20, and the state refunds 20% into the state general fund program. But I know that Orion has a CAP program, which I hope takes advantage of this 20% governor's program. In getting down to the nitty-gritty and finale, the Common Core curriculum is in this bond, and several of your board members are very uncomfortable with it. It was in the original write-up, but it's been eliminated from your website. That money should come out of the bond because it's not funded by the state. Common Core curriculum, not funded. We applaud our teachers who've purchased meals for students on occasion, and we acknowledge the pressure that these teachers are under every day to teach these GLICs towards high grade scores for MEP. We would wish that more emphasis, however, was on motivation, using success stories of pioneers like Edison and Franklin. Praise and determination when failure is overcome are backbones for solid citizens. This bond is too fat and needs to go on a diet. The Little Red Schoolhouse got the job done on basics with no fancy frills. Well, throwing in more and more money has not proven to be the answer to a successful education, and we thank you.
Now we will turn to questions. I've already had some questions handed in. If you've got a question, raise your hand. If you'd like to ask a question, raise your hand and you'll be given a card that you can write your question on. First question: if we vote for the bond issue in August and it passes, will the school board ask for yet another bond issue 5 years from now?
Bill's on the school.
5 years down the road, from a technology point of view, in which we're addressing in this bond proposal, as a district planning mechanism we've already have in place, what we refer to as a technology replacement reserve. That's almost think of it as an endowment where we're setting money aside, knowing that we've got this new equipment that a number of years from now that it itself is going to have to go through a replacement process. Thank you. We'll have to go through a replacement process itself, and we have a plan in place to address that as we go down the road 4, 5, 6 years from now.
Thank you. We've got lots more questions. With an admitted future unpaid debt level of somewhere between 147 million and 177 million, depending on whose figures you want to believe, and asking for another 33 million on these bond issues would bring us to up to 210 million in outstanding debt. And given we were only able to pay off $1.67 million of the principal the last year, while paying $7.867 million in interest, it would take us over 120 years to pay this debt if conditions remain the same. What are we doing? Are we asking to go down the same road as Pontiac Schools?
Just as a point of clarification, the year we're in now, we've paid down debt by almost $10 million. I'm not sure where the 1.6 million figure comes from. And we are scheduled this coming year to reduce another approximately $10 million in principal, and the following year the same on the existing debt. So from a practical point of view, you want me to keep it short?
Yes.
Okay.
Will school of choice students' families have to pay their portion of this bond?
No, they will not.
Where will the 6.1 million in refinancing savings from the 2012 refinance go? To retire debt faster or to operational expenses?
The refunding reduced the overall debt liability to the district, so it reduces and it speeds up the total payback.
When will the 1994 bond, looks like $20.2 million, be retired?
The 1994 bond has been retired. It's been defeased off the books, the balance sheet of the district, through a refunding process done in 2005.
And how is a senior citizen on a fixed income going to take care of this?
We are acutely aware of what we are asking. Every dollar in this economy counts. We know that. We also want to keep it in context of it's an investment in the school district, in the community, and the growth of that community.
What provisions are being considered should we have to absorb students from the Pontiac schools?
Thanks, John. Well, the legislature has adjourned, and that's good news for us. The legislative issues relate only to two school districts right now. That's Inkster and Buena Vista. The legislature was changed from being more global, that would include Pontiac. Right now it's for districts that have between 300 and 2,400 students. So Pontiac is not affected. There are a number of issues that are being addressed in Pontiac. The Intermediate School District is developing a plan to present to the legislature so that the Intermediate School District has some responsibility in helping the Pontiac schools. So at this point, you're right, Joanne, we're safe.
In an economy such as we have, why wouldn't you break the bonds up into, quote, necessary bond building needs, and to a technology bond for items that are not truly necessary?
Well, the bond program, we believe everything in there is very necessary. One of the things that I think is very important to understand is with the technology, I think that everybody here understands that we need the safety security. Many of the safety security issues that are in the bond cannot be implemented without the technology infrastructure that is also in the bond.
You mentioned in the presentation 3 rings of security. What about the kids getting off the bus?
Well, you know, I mean, there's no question that we are concerned about all of those things. You know, I really don't even know how to answer that. We can only handle what's inside the building. We do have staff outside of the buildings as children are coming into the buildings. They are not unmonitored at any time. Our main concern, of course, is to ensure that once they're in that building, they're also safe.
You mentioned the condition of the football turf. This question writer says, go back to grass. And I would add my question, which is you talked about improvements to lights. Are you going to LED lights to save on energy consumption and the need for less frequent replacement of the lights?
In some instances, we'll be looking at that. In many other instances, it's more of the 8-inch tubular white circular.
What are some of the specific security improvements that will be made if the bond is successful?
Well, I think John spoke to a number of those in terms of the ring the three rings. One, of course, is that the hardware on the doors and the latches. Another big issue is that it will be card access as opposed to key access. Keys tend to be lost or replicated, so everybody will have their own card. The other positive thing about card access is that it's assigned to a person, so you know who's coming in the building and what time they're coming in and what time they're leaving and so forth. So those are two of them. We talked about the walls, so that with the entries in some of our buildings right now, you can walk into the entry, and as John suggested, you can go any which way. There will be walls erected so that that will not be allowed, so that easy access into the hallways and classrooms is eliminated.
How many contractors did you get estimates from on the cost for furniture, building construction, repair, site development, equipment, and security, and so forth?
We use a professional professional architectural firm working with professional construction firms to pull their initial data for when you build the cost projections. The actual bidding process ferrets out what the best price is.
Just a reminder, those in the private sector have experienced extreme cuts and less in their benefits. Some have had more short-time drop in their medical benefits than they have feet. Premium costs have gone up, and so have co-pays. So this is more a comment than a question. Schools that do not have the benefit of the technology that Lake Orion has presently often do just as well as Lake Orion. So where's the proof that these new technologies will benefit anyone? And how do you control the, quote, collected data from computers used by the kids to make sure this information isn't used nefariously?
You want to answer that, Sophia?
I'll reread the question for you.
Sophia is our Director of Technology.
Schools that do not have the benefit of the technology that Lake Orion has presently often do just as well as Lake Orion students. So where's the proof that these new technologies will benefit anyone? And how do you control the, quote, collected data from computers used by the kids to make sure that this information isn't used nefariously?
Well, it's never really about technology. It's always about the curriculum. Technology supports the curriculum, and so it's really important to remember that what our students are learning is based on what our teachers are teaching, and the curriculum tools support that. I can't speak to a school that's doing as well as Lake Orion without the technology. I wouldn't be aware of that school. I mean, I'd really want to be able to go into those classrooms and see, but it's really about preparing our kids for 21st century learning, which was spoken about earlier in terms of how our students are learning, and they're coming to school not learning with those same tools. The second part of the question about data collection, it's really important to remember that we have security systems in place, data controls in place to protect our students. We're required by law to make those protections. We have SIPA requirements by the federal government that require filtering, and so those security measures are always in place to protect our students.
Thanks, Sophia.
If you've got a question, Mr. Holt, put it in writing.
I would like to make a comment.
Okay, make a comment.
And I guess hold on. I'm going to leave all the factual questions to our experts, but this falls into the opinion. And in my mind, we're an exceptional school, exceptional school system. Our students test in the top of the county, and so there really isn't a school district that we could talk about that has less technology that is performing comparably to us. We are, in some cases, we're first, second, third, but virtually everything in the MEP test, we're within the top 6 in the county. So I think that the premise of that question is a misunderstanding of the facts of our performance here.
Anybody on the other side wish to respond?
I would be interested in seeing some sort of peer-reviewed study, but I don't think it exists.
Thank you. Will all school entrances have security measurements or just a certain amount? I think they mean a certain amount of the schools.
Yes, all of our schools are scheduled for security.
And what about teachers? Maybe some of them having weapons?
That's unrelated to the bond.
Law level issue.
With your proposal, how many police security will be on site?
Again, that is not covered by the bond. We currently have one security officer who is at our high school.
That is all the questions I have. Are there any other questions? If you could bring them up. I've got another question of my own, and that is, I've read in the paper about teacher layoffs. What impact will this bond issue have on being able to call back teachers?
None. You cannot use bond money for staffing or for salaries or for compensation, as John stated earlier.
Okay. Are you looking at additional privatization of the bus service?
Again, that's really unrelated to the bond program. We are always looking at ways to reduce our costs and cut expenses.
Are you able to get technology grants? And if so, have you applied for them?
Yes, we right now, what is that one called? The 22I grant we have received. How much is that? $77,000.
Can you sell advertising to fund the replacement of your football turf?
I don't know. Oh, board policy does not allow us to sell advertisement at this time. That's something we certainly can look into.
Will there be a reduction in insurance costs with these security measures?
There's a potential for our property casualty insurance to reflect a reduction in premium value. And that's one that's a wait to be seen in terms of how that comes out from our pool. We're a member of an insurance pool.
Will the new technology reduce teaching costs?
No, I don't think so.
Is there a payback aside from possible student achievement?
In terms of the technology, I think there's a payback in the entire bond program, quite frankly. It gives our students an edge. I have to be very candid with you. We are now in a competitive business where we never were before. With Schools of Choice, our Schools of Choice program, we only did this for 62 students are entering, which will bring in revenue to the district. It is a one-year issue with our board for this current school year as a result of the declining finances. But I have to tell you that our surrounding districts are very open to Schools of Choice and are very competitive in terms of that. We have Schools of Choice for K-2 students. Many of our surrounding districts have opened up their schools K through 12. With all of the building, for those of you who were at the township, kind of the state of the township that Chris Barnett recently did, he made it pretty clear that we are a growing community, which is really exciting for all of us. And as a growing community, we have the opportunity to bring in a number of new children to our districts. There's about 700 to 800 homes coming in. We want those children to come to our schools. We want our schools to be competitive. And so it's really critical in terms of improving what we have for our children. So that certainly is an advantage.
No. I want to, on behalf of the Greater Oakland Republican Club, I want to thank all of you for coming, for your interest in coming out on this warm night to learn more about the school bond issue, for the questions that you've asked, for your courtesy as this program has been presented. And now as we conclude, I would invite all of you to have some of the refreshments there at the back of the room. Take time to chat with one another. The people from the school board, from the school administration will be here. So if you've got a question that you didn't know quite how to word or you didn't want to take the time to write it down, I'm sure people here from the school district, people who are in favor of the bond issue, people who are opposed to the bond issue would be happy to talk with you some more. And I want to thank Orion Township and the Orion Center for making this facility available so that we may present this program, information in the public interest. And a big thank you to On TV, who has taped this and will be showing it on the government channel in the future so that those who couldn't come tonight have a chance to see it. So thank you for coming and have a great evening.